Hey everybody, I just wanted to give you an introduction to the play command that's sort of geared towards beginners that perhaps don't have much exposure to the SID or don't have much exposure to music in general, how to sequence music. So just to give you a head start on how to get your foot in the door with this stuff. So firstly, why add this sort of music into your basic programs? Just to reflect back on history, back in the Commodore 64 days with Basic 2, most of our basic programmers tended to be silent. There was no music in them. And why was that? Because programming the SID music from basic was a lot of hard work. Lots of poking around here and there into this and that register just to play a single note, and even extra work to try and sequence those notes into like a sophisticated song. So I think most of us avoided that, and as a result, we had very quiet basic programs. But the Commodore 128 tried to improve things. Their newer version of BASIC introduced a play command, and that helped out with monophonic songs a lot. So by monophonic, I mean a song that just plays one note at a time and no two notes are overlapping. Uh, and that was a lot easier, but the cons was, polyphonic songs that require notes played at the same time. Those were very tricky to program in this version of BASIC. And also a downside was the play command would block. In other words, you couldn't have the song playing in the background while your program continued running. So for the Mega 65, in Basic 65, we've improved the play command to make things a bit friendlier. So it's now a non-blocking function. So that means you can sequence a song via play, trigger it, and your program will continue running the background. So you could have background music for a game, for example. And also, compared to the past, this makes polyphonic music sequencing a lot easier than it was back in even the 128 days. And we can sequence up to 6 channels of polyphonic music. So this even surpasses the Commodore 64, where you were limited to 3 channels. And so again, why would you want to go to this effort to add music to your basic program? I'd say because the barriers are now much sort of easier to overcome. It's definitely easier to do so. And your basic programs will no longer need to be silent then. I think that's quite a wonderful thing. So by adding a bit of music and background music into your programs, you're just enhancing that user experience. People will find your programs a bit more memorable, something more to sort of cotton onto their brains and make them enjoy it. But you might be thinking, I don't know the first thing about music. Is this really territory I want to step into? And I'll just assure you that it's worth a shot. And just maybe don't worry, just keep things simple to begin with. Just even adding a simple, short, monophonic song into your program, it's going to add a lot of character and personality. So even those small efforts can be appreciated by your users. So focus on that short attempts, and those short attempts you'll skill up, you'll learn more skills, and it'll get easier and easier next time. And I think after a while you find your melodies will get more and more ambitious too. So here's a crash course in music theory to try and get you up to speed quickly. And I'll do this via basic play command as much as I can. We'll talk about notes, silence, octaves, duration, and timbre, which is, I think, the French pronunciation, something like texture. So for notes, I'd like you to think about, if you ever watched the musical The Sound of Music, think about Julie Andrews and the children singing the Do Re Mi song. If you haven't watched this film, I highly recommend it. It's a great family film, and it'll definitely introduce your kids to music in a nice, positive way. And the Do Re Mi song, think of that, and in the American notation, that's equating to C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And that's the scaled notes on a piano. And before we go into that, let's play around with Zemu and let's try out some of these notes so you get a feel for it. So C, D, E. And you can imagine if you go up the scale, you're playing all the notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Okay. And sharps and flats, that's where at points where between these notes you see the black notes. There are points where you feel like, I wish I could have a note somewhere in between C and D. There's some frequency that sits there. And in musical terms, we call that either sharpening the C. I've also hinted at Jaws here as a movie you can think of when you sharpen or flatten a note by a tiny little bit. It's equivalent to the Jaws theme song. If you've watched that movie, you'll know the theme song goes dun 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 dun. So when you think of this smallest sort of gradation of notes, that's the sort of gradation we're talking about here. So yeah, we can either think of sharpening the note C to become C sharp, or flattening the note D to become D flat. But honestly, these are the same notes. C sharp and D flat are one and the same. And we can give that a try and see here. So if we play C, if we play C sharp, oddly, Commodore notation puts the sharp in front of the note. And if we play D flat, they use a notation of dollar for flat for some reason, but that's the same note too. If we play D, we can hear that's a little bit higher too. So playing them all, C, C sharp, D sharp, D flat, and yeah. And for that Jaws example, let's try C, C sharp, C, C sharp, C, C sharp, just so you can play the Jaws theme song. There you go. Hopefully that puts sharps and flats on your radar. And the same thing here. So between the D and the E notes, if you want something in the middle, you can either sharpen the D or flatten the E. And this is all documented in the manual. Look for the play command and you'll see sharps and flats I mentioned there. Silence. If you want to inject some silence in between notes, you use the R letter to inject that. So we can give that a shot. So let's say C, D, E. If we wanted to inject silence between each of those, C, silence, D, silence, E, silence, C, silence, silence, silence. Okay, so that's basically how that works. And again, that's documented in the manual with the R for meaning pause or rest. Octaves. So one octave is a term to describe these 12 notes we can have from C ranging all the way up to B. Here I've notated that as octave number 4. So if we want notes that are higher than this range, we describe this as going up an octave. So let's say this is going up to octave 5. Or if we want notes lower than this range, we say we're going down an octave, and that's how I'm calling this octave 3. So if we wanted to try out concepts like this, we could, let's say, play on octave 4, C, D, E, maybe go up to octave 5, go down to octave 3, maybe just for fun, let's go down to octave 2 too. And so if we look at the manual again, that's just saying use an octave and a number. And manual, we go octave can be from 0 to 6. Any of those numbers are fine. Talking more about duration, that's the length of the note, how long you want the note to go on for, or it could be the length of silence you want between notes. And that's described in the manual as well. This can usually be a bit of a head spin for beginners in music and musical notation, all these concepts and terms, half note, eighth note, quarter note, 16th note, whole note. So maybe I'll try and dwell on it a little bit more. So maybe a very common one is the quarter note here. Each one of these is half the length of the one prior to it. So by a quarter note, actually let's get these notations out of the way. We say a whole note is the longest length of note we can describe, and a half note, you use a H to describe it, and that's half the length of the whole note. A quarter note is half the length of the half note. The eighth note, which we use I to describe, is the half of the quarter note. 16th note is half the length of the eighth note. We don't have any notation in BASIC for 32nd and 64th notes. That's as fine gradation as we go. And maybe we can get a feel for that in ZEMU too. So let's say I play these notes with a quarter note length, duration. Dun, dun, dun. What if I play the same group of notes with a half note, C, D, E? And I could do whole notes, but that'd be really long. So maybe I'll just do eighth notes. So C, D, E. And maybe let's just for fun do 16th notes. C, D, E. So yeah, that way you get a feel for how long you want your note to transpire for. And dotted notes. I'll make a brief mention of dotted notes. There you encode those with this dot character. And that makes each of these notes go for the length described, let's say the whole note. If you put a dot on a whole note, it'll go for the length of the whole note, plus half the length of the note as well. So this plus the length of this too. Or if you put a dot on the H, it's going to be this plus the length of that too. So maybe it's better to fill this out with an example. Let's say if I put quarter notes of C, D, E, and now instead of quarter notes I use dotted quarter notes. To do that I put a dot in front of each letter. C, dotted quarter C, dotted quarter D, and dotted quarter note for E. You can see it's slightly longer versus, and maybe for further comparison, have a listen to what a half note sounds like. C, D, E. So you can see that's even longer. So you get a sense that the dotted quarter is just the halfway length in between the half note length and the quarter note length. So to hear them all again, quarter note length, dotted quarter notes, and half notes. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some bearings on how dotted notes work. Timbre. This describes the texture or flavor of a sound. So in the SID chip, you've already got some default waveforms like triangle, sawtooth, and pulse and noise, which already give a lot of the expressive flavor of the sound. In addition, you can also shape those with the envelopes or to control the volume over time. And the basic that provides this envelope command, it comes with some existing preset timbres which you can choose from or in your play command, or you could alter them if you wanted to. So just to give some exposure in the manual, there's this table down here. This end column is like the index to one of these instruments, as they call them. And so if you pick one of these indexes inside your play command, it'll select that instrument. And that selection is done via this T character followed by a number. So if we were to try that in BASIC, I'll just give that a go. So we've got our example up here of, let's say, I'll do quarters again. And I'll choose T0. So that's the first item here, the piano apparently. So according to Commodore, that's what a piano sounds like. And T1, selecting accordion for that texture. T2, calliope. T3, drum, which is just noise. And flute. So it's a nice easy way to quickly pick between these timbres or textures, so you don't have to do any heavy lifting to create such textures. Some has been done for you. If you did want to play around with these, alter the envelope, play with the attack, decay, sustain, release, change the waveform, change the pulse width, yeah, you're welcome to dive into such settings and tweak these preset instruments in any way, shape or form you want to tailor to your song as well. I'll leave that for something for more advanced people to play with. And the play command makes mention of this, the T for choosing the instrument envelope, or what I call timbre, from 0 to 9, those items in the table. So maybe a simple example we can try is Mary Had a Little Lamb, the children's song. And here I've provided what that string would look like fed into the play command, but we can have a little fiddle and try and work it out ourselves and see what those pieces mean. So play O4, that's selecting octave 4, T5, the fifth texture or the fifth instrument, and then quarter note. So up to this point, no music is being played, just sort of selections and characteristics are being decided upon. But if then we start doing these note letters, then we start getting into the notes. Okay, so da, 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 da. And maybe from habit, I know da, da, da. So yeah, you might figure things out by ear and realize, oh, I need to add a bit of a longer note here. Dun, dun, dun. That last E needs to be a bit longer. Then we put a H there, so it's double the length of these quarter notes. And then maybe go back to the quarter notes here. Dun, dun. And then maybe dun, dun, dun. Again, this this probably needed to be a little bit longer. Oops, and maybe bring these back to quarter notes. And then half note here. That's a longer last G at the end. And I'll just finish the melody up. For the last note, it goes on even longer. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll make that a whole note. Maybe I want to run it a bit faster. Okay, I'm happy with that. So we've made our first sequence of the song. can we make it a polyphonic song by adding a bass line? So we can preserve what we had there inside, let's say, a melody variable. I'll call it $M, and then we can add a bass line on top of it, and then we can use the play command to play the melody and the bass line. So let's give that a try. I'll put this one, $M, oops, $M equals. And again, let's try to do the bass line through experimentation. So octave 2, the idea there being if it's a bass line, we tend to go for lower sounding notes, deep, and so it's gone down from octave 4 down to octave 2. And so I'm picking a different timbre, different instrument, 6. Again, I'm going for quarter notes, and I'm kind of just toggling between notes in a chord. Do, 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 do. And just because I'm familiar with chord patterns, I know the G pattern is D, B, G, B, C, G, E, G, C, G, E, G, C, G, E, G, D, B, G, B, C, G, E, G, and yeah. There you go. So we can make that our bass line. Bass line $B equals this. And so then we can play our melody and our bass line together, and we get there. I might preserve that tempo choice too. I like that tempo. So yeah, we've got our polyphonic version working now. So maybe now next we can try a stereo version. By that, I have to describe in the play commands in documentation. You'll see it's the 6 voices it's capable of here. The first group of 3 are slightly biased to the right on your stereo, and the last group of 3 are slightly biased to the left on your stereo sound. And I think in ZEMU they've got it the wrong way around. ZEMU presently biases it, this group to the left and right, but on the hardware it's this way. This group is right, that's left. But again, we can use the same melody we had before in the $M and the bass line in the $B, but this time we can spread that melody across the sort of right biased and left biased channels. So let's give that a try. So I'll just clear this and list it. So here we've got a melody playing on channel 1, which is right biased, bass line playing on channel 2, which is right biased. We're skipping voice channel 3, because that's also right bias, and we're going through the left bias group now. Channel 4 will play the melody again, but this time left bias, and the bass line again left bias on channel 5. So if we run this, nice. Okay, we've got stereo. So now this time let's tweak it a little bit more. Let's have stereo plus a bit of echo or reverb if you like. So we'll use again the same melody string, the same bass line string, but this time we're going to do just a play command of the right biased ones, put a little sleep in between, and then play the left biased channels. And let's see how this sounds. So it's like what we had before, except I'll put the sleep in there, and I'll skip the first 3 channels, voice 1, voice 2, voice 3, and voice 4, melody, voice 5, bass line. Let's have a listen. So there you go, just adding a little bit of echo like that can add a bit more richness and texture too, just a bit of fun to have. And then another example is like having fun with this idea of that you've now got control over stereo. So what if we were to sort of mishmash the notes in between the channels, if you like? So that melody line, here in this example, I split it up. So I've made a melody 1 and a melody 2. It's pretty much the same melody, except I've put rest notes in place of notes in different sections of them. So it'll sort of jump between them. And so maybe we can sort of work out an example like this too. So where I'll basically just copy that line 10, I'll make that $M1, and I'll make line 15 $M2. I'll just list that out again. And so as we go through this thing, so for the first melody, and then I want the next section of notes silent, 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 and then silent, 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 I'm happy with that. And for the melody 2, I'm going to do the opposites. So the ones that were playing on that channel, I'm going to make silent on this channel. So silent, 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 da, 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 silent, 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 da, 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 and silent, 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 silent. Okay, and pretty much everything else is the same. So if we on that play command, I'll have to tweak that. So the right biased ones, I'll use melody 1, and the left biased channels, I'll use melody 2. Okay, if we run that. There you go, quick way to have some more fun. And another thing, simple addition, you could add looping. So that's just a matter of adding this L character to the end of each string. And as long as each strings are equivalent length in music terms, then this will work fine. If they're different lengths, it can get a bit tricky, but just assure that they're the same. Just quickly add L's everywhere. And 1, 2, 3. And if we run it again. There we go. You could have a game running in the background now, so yeah, it's a pretty easy effort to get some nice music running in your game. To stop this, just type play and enter. That'll stop everything. So yeah, oh sorry, I forgot to give that example. Oh, okay. Oh, how do I sequence my own song? You might be thinking, okay, that's all well and good, but what about if I wanted to do something on my own? So if you're covering an existing song, like maybe there's a song you like and you'd like to make a rendition of it, just try and listen to it repeatedly and try and hum along to the main melody part of it. And experiment with the like little short play strings and try and match that segment that you're humming along to. And as you hum each note, you can sort of count the beats within the note to try and get a measure of the duration you need. And that'll help which duration symbol you should use. So maybe we could just try and experiment with something like that now. Maybe I'll clear that example. So if you wanted to Incy Wincy Spider, let's say, so you go Incy Wincy Spider, climbed up the water spout. I'll speed up the tempo. And already they're all the same length notes, so maybe they're all quarter notes, so maybe you want to Incy Wincy Spy. Spy tends to be a bit longer. Let's make that a half note. And let's bring it back to quarter notes. Yeah, so yeah, with a bit of experimentation, trial and error, you might get the notes wrong. You might need to make them a little lower or a little higher, but just trial and error and you'll get them. Then if you want to do a bass line as well, then try and listen to the song again, but this time listen to the lower notes played by the lower sounding bass instruments and catch those bass line melodies. And you're basically doing the same thing again. Use the play command, put short little strings in there and try and match that bass line melody that you're humming along to. So maybe you want to do, You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer. I tried this earlier, it was tough to nut out. So it's a bass line, I'll make it O2, this might take a bit longer. Boom, 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 boom. Sorry, I did it wrong. I'll do E yet. Boom. I'll make it half note. And I'll make it 20. I'll make it 30 this time. 1, 2, then C, D, C. C doesn't sound right. Needs to be a bit sharper. Yeah, there we go. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe go down an octave to B. Yeah, that sounds good. So 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. So this will be a half note but dotted. 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, 3. And then quarter note. Boom. Back on octave 2. Maybe D. No, not D. Maybe C. A bit lower. No, maybe C sharp. Yeah. And then boom, boom. So again, it's a octave 1, lower than the B, so a dotted maybe A. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, boom, boom. And back to quarter note. and maybe a C sharp again on octave 2. Yeah, that sounds right. And boom, boom, maybe octave 2, maybe whole note. Maybe too high, so maybe go back to octave 1 to B. And maybe we want that to repeat. And there you go, you've got your bass line. So, all right. Yeah, hum each note and try and count the beats within that note to give you a feel for what duration the note should be. Maybe a more complicated example might be the Warhawk music game. I think if you had your feel, you're welcome to stop here. But let's nut this out because this will be even tricky for me. But at least you'll see me struggling and failing and rectifying, and you'll see that process going through in my head. So maybe if we go back to listen to what that track sounds like, maybe start around It's that last section I'd like to copy. So again, it's just a matter of trying to mimic that melody through experimentation, trial and error, and then after that mimic the bass line too. So let's give it a shot. La la la. So I'm going to start at octave 4. Maybe I'll pick a timbre of 5. La. No, that's too high. La. Yeah, I like that. La. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go the half note or half dotted. 1, 2, 3. Maybe I'll make the tempo a bit faster. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I like that. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Another dotted note. 1, 2, 3. Maybe A. 1, 2, 3, 1. That's too high. So maybe G sharp. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yep. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 4. Oh, that 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that'll be a whole note. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, whole note. Maybe this will be F, maybe? No? E? Going lower, maybe D? Too low, maybe D sharp. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so we're doing half note. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, maybe E. Yep. 1, 2, 1, 2, E, D. I'll try some. Maybe that's octaves 1, B. Oh, not octave 1, sorry. Octave 3. Actually, I don't think it is a whole note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think this is again just a dotted half note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I think this is also 1, 2, 3, and these are just normal half note. Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Maybe G. Did it A? No, a bit higher. A sharp. Yeah, so that'll be 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, that's a bit tricky. Well, let's get the note right first. Maybe G. Nope, not low enough. Maybe D sharp, oops, D sharp. Yeah, so maybe because it is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, 10. So maybe I'll do a whole note but dotted. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I just have to 7, 8, 9, 10 can be a whole note rested. So maybe that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So let that be my melody line. Okay, just run that so I can play Emperor. Okay, I'm happy with that just as an initial melody. Let's try and listen to the bass line. So if we go back and go back a little bit here. So it's just bouncing up and down octave. So I just have to figure out what octaves to bounce up and down. Boom, boom. Maybe boom. A bit lower. A bit lower. A bit sharper. I think that's fine. So, boom. So now timing, duration. I think it's just a quarter note. 1, 1, 1, boom, boom. 1, 1, 2. So that's octave 1. I'm going to bounce between octave 1 and 2. Boom. Then half note. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. Then back down to octave 1 for a quarter note. Boom. Then back to octave 2 for another quarter note. Boom. And then back down to boom. 1, 2, 3. Boom, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So I'll make that a half note but dotted. And G sharp. Okay. So. And I think I just repeat that again. Okay, so let's do it again. Back to octave. Oh, no, it's already on octave 1. And so just have to go to quarter note again. Boom, boom. And this is half note. Boom. Back to quarter note. Boom. Oops. Oh, it's hard to keep it in my head. Boom. Boom. Back to the. Okay. Let's try that with the melody. That sounds good. Alright. Boom, 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 boom. Something like that, isn't it? And boom, 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 boom. So it's boom, maybe B. Actually, let's play it in isolation. Maybe it's C. To C. No, C sharp. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to octave 2. Actually, let's do this just in little chunks so we can. Let's do it here. Yeah. So octave 2, a quarter note. Boom. Half note. 1, 2. So that's octave 3. Or half note. Ding. And then back to 2. Quarter note. Boom. Then octave 3. Boom. 1, 2, 3, and back to octave 2 with the 1, 2, 3. Okay. Actually, oops. Yeah, and I think we can just repeat that again. So again, quarter note, C sharp, boom, octave 3, half note, boom, 2, octave 2, back to quarter note, boom, octave 3, boom, another quarter note, and back back down to boom on a half note, dotted, boom. Okay, go. So maybe let's try that with the melody too. Yeah, so there you go. We've got our bass line. Is there. I'll put that on line 20. And anything else? Let's maybe play it. I'll play it on there. And I'll put a little sleep in between for a bit of an echo. And then I'll play 1, 2, 3 on the other bias channels, $, and $, and let's go. And that's basically all you do. You just keep on nutting out the song segment by segment, and eventually you'll get there. And at this point, I just sort of wanted to allay any worries or self-doubts and fretting over getting things perfect. And by just letting in, you might feel like, oh, but it's not exactly the same as Rob Hubbard's version, or boo-hoo. But I'd say don't worry about that. Just let your version be unique to you. So express your own style and your own preferences. Everybody's unique. Everyone's going to sequence things differently based on the past songs they listened and what they prefer, how they prefer to embellish music. And just let this be an expression of you. And you also might think, but I can't do all the clever tricks Rob Hubbard does. He does all the arpeggios and he puts filters and he does PWMs and things like this and pulse widths. And again, I'd say don't fret. No need to mimic other people exactly. Just do your own thing, and in time you might find that you'll be doing things that Rob Hubbard didn't do either. You might think, well, did he do sort of things in stereo with no sort of bouncing on left channels and right channels in his 64 days? He probably didn't, because that option wasn't available to him. So you can already say that you're dabbling with things that he never did. Also, see Basic 65's play command is just an easy foot in the door approach to getting into the SID if you've never been there before and played with these things. So maybe before that, I'd say the SID music used to be like a black science, a black art that a few of us could fathom, because it just was so inaccessible from Basic. It used to be just for the magicians, the assembly code programmers that had some musicianship background behind them that could master such things. But now it's more of a level playing field. It's open to you, to me, to anybody that's really interested. And Basic 65 has made it a lot more easy and accessible for everybody to just get their foot in the door. So, and you'll find as your music skills grow with the SID, you might be getting more advanced yourself. Maybe you'll start exploring more powerful music software out there. Other people use trackers and such. But you can always look back on the play command as at least giving you some foundation skills, and it'll help you get your bearings. And I'm sure you'll make use of those skills in other more advanced tools as well. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. So, yeah, thank you very much for listening, and all the best with your efforts.